28 days, that's how long the United States has been at war with Iran. And in those 28 days, more has changed in the global order than in the previous 4 years combined. But you won't understand any of it from cable news because nobody is putting the full picture together. So let's do it right now. Every number, every front, every consequence, 1 month of war from every angle. Let's start with the military numbers, because the gap between what officials are saying and what the data shows is enormous. The coalition, the United States and Israel, has conducted over 4,200 airstrikes against Iranian targets since February 28. That's an average of 150 strikes per day. 2/3 of Iran's known weapons production facilities have been destroyed. Iran's supreme leader was killed in a targeted strike during the first week. On paper, this looks like an overwhelming success. But here's the number nobody wants to talk about. More than 300 American service members have been wounded since the start of operations. At least 10 were injured in a single attack on Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia. Iran hasn't been able to stop the bombing campaign, but it hasn't stopped fighting back either. Iran's strategy was never to win an air war. It was to make the war expensive, and by that measure, it's working. The 1,000 cuts doctrine, hundreds of missile and drone launches per day, proxy attacks across the region, strikes on shipping, has forced the U.S. to expend resources at a rate that wasn't planned for. The Pentagon's initial estimate was a 4 to 6 week campaign. Officials quietly acknowledged this week that the timeline may need to extend. Now let's talk about the money, because this is where the war becomes personal for every American. The direct military cost of 28 days of operations is estimated at $14 billion. That's $500 million per day. For context, the entire first year of the Afghanistan war cost $20 billion. We're spending at a rate that would put the Iran war at $180 billion annually if sustained. But the direct cost is a fraction of the economic damage. Brent crude hit $112.57 on March 27th. Dubai crude, the physical delivery price, hit $126. That's a 76% increase from pre-war levels. Every dollar increase in the price of oil costs the global economy approximately $100 billion per year in reduced output. At current prices, the oil shock alone is extracting roughly $2.6 trillion annually from the world economy. The average American household is paying $1.40 more per gallon of gas than they were 1 month ago. Over a year, that's roughly $2,000 per family. And gas prices aren't the only thing rising. Transport costs affect everything: food, manufacturing, shipping. Inflation that was finally cooling is now accelerating again. Now the regional picture. The Iran war isn't one war, it's 5 simultaneous conflicts. Front 1, Iran itself. Air campaign continues. 2/3 of known weapons facilities destroyed. But Iran retains an estimated 40% of its pre-war missile stockpile and continues to launch daily attacks on U.S. and allied positions. Front 2, Lebanon. Israel expanded operations against Hezbollah on March 2nd. At least 1,189 people have been killed, 124 children among the dead. Hezbollah has launched over 2,000 rockets into northern Israel in retaliation. Front 3, the Strait of Hormuz. Iran declared a partial blockade, open to non-hostile nations, closed to U.S. allies. Insurance rates for tankers up 400%. Several major shipping companies rerouting around Africa, adding 10-14 days to deliveries. Front 4, Yemen. The Houthis entered the war on March 28th, firing ballistic missiles at Israel. The Bab el-Mandeb Strait, 12% of global trade, is now a combat zone. Front 5, Iraq and Syria. Iranian-backed militias have launched over 80 attacks on U.S. positions in both countries. 3 U.S. bases have been hit in a single week. 5 fronts, 4 countries under bombardment, and the war is 1 month old. Now let's zoom out to the global consequences, because this war isn't happening in isolation. Global military spending has reached $2.6 trillion, the highest since the Cold War. The United States alone is over $1 trillion annually, a 13.4% increase from last year. India increased its budget by 15%. Europe is spending at rates not seen since the 1980s. China is at $278 billion officially, though real spending is estimated at nearly double that. The New START nuclear arms treaty expired on February 5, 2026 without renewal. For the first time since 1970, there is no legal limit on the number of nuclear warheads the US and Russia can deploy. This isn't theoretical. Both countries have begun modernization programs that will increase deployed warheads within 18 months. Pakistan has emerged as an unlikely mediator, brokering a deal to allow 20 ships under Pakistani flag to pass through the Strait of Hormuz daily. This is the only diplomatic breakthrough of the war, and it was led by a country that has its own border conflict, with Afghanistan escalating simultaneously. The humanitarian toll is devastating and underreported. Iran, 1,900 killed in airstrikes, including an unknown number of civilians. Lebanon, 1,189 killed. American service members, over 300 wounded. The UN estimates 2.4 million people have been displaced across the region. So where does this end? The Pentagon says weeks. The data says longer. Here are the 3 scenarios. Scenario 1, Kharg Island seizure. The US takes Iran's oil export hub, collapses Tehran's revenue to near zero, and forces a capitulation within 6-8 weeks. Oil spikes to $140, then stabilizes. This is the military's preferred outcome. Probability, 40%. Scenario 2, attritional stalemate. Iran's 1,000 cuts strategy prevents a clean victory. The war extends to 3-6 months. Oil stays above $120. The US faces growing domestic opposition. The No Kings movement is already at 3 million protesters. Political pressure forces a negotiated settlement on unfavorable terms. Probability, 35%. Scenario 3, diplomatic off-ramp. Pakistan's mediation expands. Iran accepts modified terms, nuclear dismantlement in exchange for sanctions relief and a ceasefire. Both sides claim victory. Oil drops back to $85 within months. Probability, 25%. 28 days, 300 wounded Americans, $14 billion spent, 5 active fronts, oil at $126, $3 million people protesting in the streets, and no end in sight. That's month 1 of the Iran war, and every single indicator suggests month 2 will be worse. What do you think the end game is? Quick victory, long war, or negotiated peace? Comments below. Subscribe to Realpolitik for weekly war analysis backed by data, not opinion.